tuning into Roll Call. Your selection is a double feature. Nurses on the Line, The Crash of Flight 7, and My Family.
All right, and we're live. Welcome to Roll Call, the show where two childless millennials gush over movies and follow an actor's journey from their early years through their blockbuster hits. Because, let's face it, we all miss Blockbuster.
Yeah, someone's got to keep the blockbuster spirit alive. Hi, I'm Bria, a girl wishing she was still in a 90s kind of world.
And I'm Simone, a girl who is still rocking overalls and butterfly clips well into her 30s.
Yeah, just think of us as those annoying people at the party who can't let the 90s go.
True. And even though we are forever 21 and still think 1998 was 5 years ago, this podcast will focus on a span of movies that goes over many years. But if we are lucky, we'll get to stay in the 90s for a bit.
So this season, we're focusing on Jennifer Lopez, and today's episode will focus on her first two roles in Lost in the Wild and My Family. We should start with Lost in the Wild, which was a TV movie.
Yes.
So we'll take a trip back to 1993.
So Bria, what was happening in the month and year? So it came out in 1993. What was happening that month?
Well, loads of stuff was happening, like Thanksgiving now. So a few pop culture things I looked up and found that were happening at the same time was that, so it just so happened that J.Lo was a fly girl on In Living Color. A lot of people know that about her, but she had just finished In Living Color in 1983. That was like her last year as a fly girl. So she went on to focus on her acting career. Also, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style came out. Like,
ooh.
Young, little, skinny, scrawny Snoop Dogg was just hot on the block in 1993 in November. So Lost in the Wild came out. It aired on CBS on a Tuesday night on November 23rd, 1993 at 9 p.m. And guess what else was on TV at 9 p.m. on that Tuesday night?
Okay, so can you give me the network and then I'll try and guess?
I'm guessing one was on Fox and one was on ABC.
Ooh. Oh, America's Funniest Home Videos.
No, but it does start with America's. It's kind of in our wheelhouse, like our other interests.
Oh, America's Most Wanted.
Yes.
Yes!
And the other thing that aired at the same time was a special on JFK, or a TV movie on JFK. I didn't look too much into it, but it's called JFK Reckless Youth, and it was part 2 of 2. It's like part 2 of 1. No, part 2 of 2, so it's the end of a 2-part series. Also in November, Schindler's List came out. So that was probably a huge movie, holiday movie that year.
Nothing says getting ready for Thanksgiving than an uplifting film like Schindler's List.
I mean, I'm sure moms were dragging dads to see that all over.
Oh, I know my parents were 100%. They got a babysitter that night. Very true. And one thing I thought was interesting is that when we were doing research for this movie, and if you are interested in watching it, you can definitely stream it for free on YouTube. Hopefully it doesn't get taken down by this point, but it's not recorded in the best quality. It is clearly recorded from someone's VHS tape and then uploaded back onto a YouTube platform. But because this is a made for TV movie, I couldn't find out the cost that it took to make this or what it would actually have grossed. But one thing I thought was interesting for both of these movies is that they were shot nearly the entire time on location in Mexico, although they were 2 different cities that they would be recording in. And then for this movie, I don't know if that's the nature of a made for TV movie, but it only took about 1 month to shoot, from starting in July 12th to August 6th, and then aired 3 months after. And For the quality of movie it was, I found that surprising. I felt like something like that would have taken more time to record. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that. Just thinking about like Hallmark movies and Lifetime movies, like they turn those bad boys out like it's nothing. So I totally could believe that. I think currently, obviously, with technology and stuff, you could definitely easily make a movie in a month. So I do find that a little interesting that for like a 90s TV movie, and it's a CBS TV movie. So it's not like a Lifetime movie where they kind of have probably a system in place of like how shooting and stuff goes. And I feel like Lifetime and Hallmark, they shoot a lot in Canada. So there's kind of like a semi small like TV movie industry probably already in place up there.
Hmm.
Whereas this was in Mexico. So I find that probably really interesting that they were able to do that on location in somewhere that's not typically a movie, hotspot and do that in such a timely manner. So I couldn't find a Roger Ebert review. Usually we try to, pay homage to one of the well-known film critics of his time. But I did find a review from Variety, and I also think partially that's because it was a made for TV movie.
Mm.
But Variety kind of compares it to MASH meets Charlie's Angels, which I could see that comparison. You've got like a little like jungle rugged type thing going on, and then you've got a bunch of women who are
Mhm.
nurses trying to like figure stuff out. So they had pretty good things to say. No one like slammed this movie. And I think part of that is because it was on a major network. It wasn't like a smaller network like Lifetime or something that's kind of it's supposed to be cheesy. Also, this is a real life event, I believe. So I think that
Based on a true event. That's right.
yeah, I think that they tried to honor this story as best as possible. And for a TV movie, I think they did a really good job at that.
I agree. And the total running time of this, I think, was only 87 minutes. That's less than an hour and a half. And
Oh,
that's
really?
also, if I don't know when it aired in 1993, if it aired with commercials or if that's
Probably.
just okay. So if it aired with commercials, then it probably had a 2 hour span, I'm assuming, once you factor in all the commercials in between. But I feel when I was watching this, it felt short. I think we've become so used to these huge blockbuster 3+ hour movies. And so it was actually really refreshing to watch something that was a little bit shorter that could hold my attention span. And I think that they were able to really give the characters and the story more justice rather than trying to drag it out and make something seem more dramatic than it might have actually have been.
You're right. That holds your attention and it's not too long for the sake of just like, we're making a movie about this. Let's make it long.
Yeah, exactly.
So, did you find any interviews or anything about J.Lo during this time in her life about this movie or role?
So because this is pre-Selena, this was one of Jennifer Lopez's few appearances on TV movies. While there were no pre-recorded physical interviews that I could find, just based on published interviews in Rolling Stone, Jennifer Lopez had reported that these earlier TV films were something that really helped her gain confidence in her earlier career and help her try out for those bigger roles. Like you mentioned earlier, Bria, she had just hopped off in Living Color. And she actually had a really bad experience towards the end. She had stated that she was constantly flying home in between shoots for the show. And she didn't go into a lot of detail, although I'm sure with some more digging, you could probably find out why she was having such a bad time. But she felt like once she had made that transition more from being a dancer into more of an actor and singing or an acting role, that she uh, felt like she was kind of starting to blossom. So, and 2 years later after this, she got her first ever role in a major film, Mi Familia or My Family, which we will also be reviewing today.
So I'm sorry, I'm just gonna be a little messy for a hot second.
Yeah.
So you're saying that at that time she was flying from LA to New York a lot because of In Living Color,
Hmm.
and she's having a hard time on In Living Color at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll probably find out more information on this as we dive deeper into this
Oh, Imma
season.
look after
Oh, I
this.
know, me too. Well, it's funny because the interview that I pulled this from, it wasn't from Rolling Stone, but this was something, it was an entertainment episode on YouTube and it was published in 1999. So she'd already done quite a bit by that point. But she had just discussed her tail end of her career on In Living Color as a fly girl, and had just kind of mentioned that there were some things that she was not happy with on set. And so instead of staying in Los Angeles for production, that she'd be flying back home to New York. But she just said very vaguely, for details I do not want to discuss and get into further. Which to me, I was like, oh, sis, spill that tea. I want to hear.
How do you think, like, this role as one of her first roles compares, like, knowing some of her other work? Like, for me, I think she did a relatively good job. She didn't really have a huge part or anything like that, but, I mean, I think she's, like, a pretty cute Latina, character that's, like, young and fun, also with the other young nurses, but different. Like, she's the young nurse whose family never she's the first to go to college, I'm assuming. I think at
Mhm.
some point she said the medical field, so I'm assuming also maybe college. So that's, like, her little background story, and some of the other nurses have their own issues or, like, trying to make it stories. But I thought this was, like, this is a solid first, like, gig.
Oh, totally. I mean, if we compare this role to her other like jungly type role in Anaconda, they're two very different characters, even in their career fields. Anaconda, which we talked about last time, she was so much more outspoken and had definitely a way more of a leading role. One thing I find interesting, and I don't know if these covers for these movies are remade over time, but in uh the wild, what I keep on wanting to say Into the Wild, sorry.
Lost in the Wild.
In Lost in the Wild, aka Nurses on the Line, The Crash of Flight 7, because it's known by two different things.
Yes.
In Lost in the Wild, um, she was not billed first, but in all of the posters and advertisements for it, you see her face pretty front and center, almost as if she was a leading role in the film.
Yeah, I saw that too on I don't know, is it on IMDb? But I noticed I've seen that poster where, like, it's, like, her, Lindsay Wagner, and Robert Loggia, and they're all,
Mhm.
like, pulling it up. They're all, like, kind of ghosted into
Mhm.
this, image of the plane crash, and whose face is the biggest? Jennifer Lopez. Even
Yeah.
though even on the poster, in terms of names, like, she's the last in order on the poster. So I feel like maybe that's a retroactive thing, maybe
Yeah.
because of things like this. Like, people being like, I don't watch, like, J.Lo movies, and they're like, oh, she was in this. Whereas if she was kind of the opposite in the background, maybe, obviously you're not going to get out of all of these actors, she's kind of the most A-list and successful as of right now. When the
Mhm.
movie came out, that wasn't true. So
Mhm.
I think it has to be retroactive, but that is weird. I
Yeah.
didn't think to bring that up.
Yeah, I just kind of thought it was interesting. But I felt like her role in general was pretty soft spoken, very different acting choices from what we'll discuss in My Family. But I think for an early budding role on a made for TV movie, she did great.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's funny too because there's another character. there's another nurse who I feel like was kind of the more important of the student nurses outside of Lindsay Wagner, because she's kind of like the lead
Mm-hmm.
nurse. But I think Jill, who's played by Paula Marshall, um, she seemed like the most like vocal and like she was kind of the intermediary between, I feel like, some of the nurses. Like she had that one scene where her and the one nurse were like, "Oh, they say I'm too tough to be a nurse. Like I don't have enough like nurse like qualities." And she's like cutting her pants into shorts and stuff. Like in a lot of those type of scenes, J.Lo was MIA, where, she could have been, very much in that conversation. So I feel like she was very soft spoken and probably underutilized, to be honest. Like,
Agreed. But one thing that I'm glad that the director of the film chose not to do was to put her as almost not as like almost one of the sole Latina characters in the movie, to not have her role be solely played as an interpreter in between the English speaking nurses and the locals in the village that they were doing, I think, what, anthroprolific nurse work for.
yeah.
It was kind of vague, but like, I could have seen if her role was bigger, it would have been bigger just based on that. And I feel like because she still had a decent amount of speaking lines, yes, it was short, or her role was not as big as it could have been. But I like the fact that they just kind of kept her as is. They kept her as a nurse, strong, level-headed, sweet, and a savior. No one died in the movie. Can you believe that?
Yes. And I know you thought the plane crash was really well done for a TV movie.
I am a fan of practical magic and practical effects, and that's one thing that I really appreciated. I texted Bria when I was watching this, and I was like, dude, this plane crash is legitimately scary. And maybe that's because plane crashes in general, the thought of it is horrifying and you would never ever want that to happen to you. But because it's those tiny little puddle jumper planes, I thought that the way that they did it was really realistic. And this movie was only rated PG, probably because it's a made for TV movie. But could you imagine if this was released in a theater, how much more they probably would have gone into with like the gore and the injuries and the plane crash itself. But I thought, shit, for made for TV movie, they did a good job with the plane crash.
Yeah, same. I agree. I feel like planes in movies, like we obviously know they're not on a real plane to do all this stuff, but this was done in a way where I did feel caught off guard, like, oh shit, like, and not like, oh yeah, it's a plane crash, in a movie. I think because of the small plane aspect and the jungle and everything, like, and the way they shot it, it really did like hit very well. So shout out to whoever figured that out for this TV movie, because excellent job, holds up well. Damn near 30 years later.
Agreed. And maybe
So
it's just because of the YouTube quality that we watched this movie on. I would love to see this on an actual TV.
same. I thought briefly, because I did watch a little bit of it this morning, and I thought briefly about just pulling it up on YouTube on my TV. But even then, like, I think I would love to see it in its original quality on TV. So, CBS, you should maybe put this on your app or something.
Re-release, yes.
So one thing I did want to do is a surprise music video that I want to talk about with Simone, because in 1993, we talked about J.Lo leaving In Living Color to focus on acting or pursue acting. But J.Lo also potentially was, or J.Lo also was in the sphere of Janet Jackson in the Janet album. So she's in the music video for That's the Way Love Goes, which is like one of my favorite Janet Jackson songs and videos, because the video is just like a vibe. Like if I could bottle like 90s videos, a lot of them would be Janet Jackson videos.
Let me bottle that essence.
But she very much is the same J.Lo from those other music videos, and very fresh off of In Living Color. She has short, curly hair. She's one of many backup dancers in the video who are actually dancers on tour with Janet. And this is just, I'm going to nerd the fuck out here, because this is all just straight off of like what I know. I didn't look up any of this for this, but I know that Janet's husband at the time, Renee, came up with the concept for the video, and I think they were prepping for the Janet tour, and so that's why a lot of the dancers are her backup dancers, and it's like a very small video in terms of it's just like this hangout spot room kind of thing. And also, J.Lo was going to go on tour with Janet as a backup dancer. So she wasn't just like a video dancer at that point. Like, she's in the video because of that. But she decided last minute to not go so she could pursue acting further. And I'm guessing, I don't know when this was shot, or maybe this just did well, or maybe she felt confident enough to be like, maybe I won't dance anymore. Maybe I should really like just pursue just acting at this point. But love that video. So props to J.Lo for being in it. Okay, so let's move on to My Family, which is J.Lo's first theatrical release in a major movie. So it came out in May of 1995, May 3rd, 1995. Poor me, I did not really look up any pop culture things that were happening in 1995.
So many.
I know when I looked up movies to see like what movies came out this month, just like the movies in 1995, like
it's a hard lineup.
Yeah, just tons of stuff. So May wasn't that competitive. There were some things in April that may have lingered into May that were pretty good. And then like when this movie came out, I don't think it had too much competition. May seemed to be a sleeper month, but like movies in January and like some in February, I didn't even go through the whole year of 1995. But just off the beginning, some of those movies, I was like, oh, that came out. Like, just makes you feel all warm inside. Michael Jordan returned to the NBA in 1995. Oh, the OJ trial. OJ was found innocent
of
1995.
Of course. I'm looking up things for May 1995 specifically. I know one of the blockbuster films that you had included that came out this year was Braveheart, starring very anti-Semitic Mel Gibson. Wah, wah. But if you look past that, you can see it's a pretty
so just to get a little Disney adult, we're high functioning Disney adults as well on this podcast. Toy Story came out in 1995. Pocahontas, Batman Forever, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls,
of course,
Jumanji. Talk about a jungle movie.
Totally. And we are going to be watching a Robin Williams movie next week with Jack.
Oh, yes. Oh, and apparently the Grateful Dead announced that they broke up in 1995.
Also, the Oklahoma City bombing happened in 1995.
Ooh, that is heavy.
That's
political.
Heavy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's heavy.
All right.
Well,
so now that we've...
And speaking of...
And speaking of bombs, I would say this film did not bomb it in the box office. That one's gonna come back and bite me. I'm so sorry. That was awful. That was awful.
That
But
was an ingenious segue.
thank you.
I was not ready for that.
This movie, my family, cost almost $4 million to make. It made 2 million its first week, but a total grossing of 11 million, which I think is pretty good considering the fact that we had a lot of big other blockbuster hits coming out in May, but also just in 1995 as well, as we had just said.
Totally. And also, let's be honest, the subject matter. It is a movie about a Mexican family and throughout the eras, like the journey of that family, really. And even now, diversity feels unmarketable to people. So for 1995, for this kind of movie to come out and do well, props to those people. I did get to read Roger Ebert's review of My Family, and what do you think his opinion was? Did you look at it, or
it was yasty or nasty?
To begin with, I wouldn't have guessed it was bad. I thought it would have been like middle ground at best, but he really enjoyed the movie. It's
No
a
shit.
4-star review.
Oh man.
Yeah. He definitely enjoyed the tale of the family and being able to, he said something about showcasing like life in its fullness and not being scared to do that. And I thought that was like really good thing to point out because it does span like different generations and different eras within this family. So that is very true. Like they weren't afraid to show the highs, the lows, the goods, the bads. And even, I don't know, even some of the stuff that maybe wasn't very like entertaining per se, like, but would just give a good foundation of like, this is this family.
Yeah, and I think for a white guy to review a movie that's based on a generational journey of a Hispanic family, that to give it 4 stars and not being able to maybe relate culture wise, I think says a lot.
Facts, because I feel like even now, like there's so many reviews about TV shows or movies or even music, just reviews in general, where it's like, maybe you should get a person of color to do this because you don't understand the cultural like impact, or you just don't have the cultural understanding to really understand the importance or like why this actually works when you think it doesn't.
Yeah.
So for him to be able to give this 4 stars and to be able to see the beauty in this story is amazing. Another thing I like that he pointed out was that this is an American story. And it really is. And I know we're going to talk about this later, like, does it hold up? But like, this is a story that would work today and just will always work because it's a part of America. Like the immigrant story is a part of America. It's a Californian story at its heart too. So I really liked it. And, we'll be talking about other parts of it, but like, what were your thoughts about like, did you see anything about J.Lo in the media regarding this role? And
Yeah. So, I mean, I can also pair this with Jennifer Lopez as an actor as well. I think that she gave such a different performance for this in My Family than in Lost in the Wild. Golly. I think obviously like just the whole context of the movie is very different. There's a lot of gut-wrenching scenes and very
emotionally felt scenes. And I think for her first legitimate role in a movie film, was really, really good, having made the transition between TV and film. I thought it was great. Jennifer Lopez said that she always thinks of this as one of her huge breakout roles because she got to star amongst some big names and work with famous director and producer Francis Ford Coppola. Interestingly enough, again, because her role is fairly small, she is the young Maria Sanchez. She goes uncredited for a while. And in some of these premiere launches, because she still did not really have the big name that she has now. However, Jennifer was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for her role as Best Supporting Actress, but she did not win. She was beat by Mare Winningham, which I'll be honest, I have no idea who that is, in the movie Georgia.
Is she black by chance?
I'm so sorry, I did not look that up.
It's okay. I don't know who she is either. I'm just assuming maybe a movie called Georgia might be like black in some way.
Right. Well, with Independent Spirit, I mean, I can just speak to like what the awards mean. It's obviously a lot different from Oscars, and a lot more known than a Golden Globe per se. But I think this was kind of one of her first big nominations.
Yeah.
So I think that says something.
Yeah, I didn't know that this was produced by Francis Ford Coppola either until I did a little IMDb digging, and I was like, oh, and I was like, you know what? That says a lot. That says a lot because I think it also gives this kind of story, especially being about people of color, like a little bit like of weight behind it, even though we don't need white people to justify telling our stories. But sometimes it's like allyship. You need someone to kind of champion these kinds of stories on your behalf. One person who I, off the top of my head, can think of is doing that currently or in recent years is Brad Pitt. He's produced a lot of stories that for African American audiences that I wouldn't have been like, oh shit, Brad Pitt, like produce that. Sure. Like, yeah, I kind of felt the same when I found or I read that Francis Ford Coppola had his hands in this pie. One thing I want to say about this movie too is like even like speaking that J.Lo like was uncredited and that her role was relatively small. There are a lot of other really well-known and I think formidable Latinx actors in this movie. And obviously Edward James Olmos is the narrator and kind of the main character. Also, they kind of copy pasted this cast from this movie to Selena. I noticed that immediately. But I think she's in really good company for like such a big first step from going from a TV movie and music videos and Living Color and stuff like that and being in a movie that has a theatrical release. Like she was surrounded by a pretty awesome like all-star cast that would go on to continue to do amazing things. Constance Marie, who a lot of people might know specifically from like Georgia Lopez, but she was also in Selena as well. So I don't know. This movie just has a lot of like, it has a lot of the right things. And I feel like it just is probably really timely at that time too.
Mm-hmm.
For the month of May in 1995, not the same week or anything, this movie didn't really have a lot of competition. The only other movie that came out like that close to this movie that did better was French Kiss, which I'm curious to see what that's about because I've never heard of it. But a lot of the other movies that came out that month, Die Hard with a Vengeance, which, yes, Braveheart, Casper came out.
Can I keep you? Yes, you can, Devin Sawa. Always and forever.
Which kind of surprised me because if you had asked me, like, oh, when do you think Casper came out? Like, I would have pegged it like as probably a Halloween type fall release, not a May. And I know that horror movies come out throughout the year. It's not always packed full of horror movies around Halloween, but I don't know. It just May kind of caught me off guard. And then um just out of curiosity to see if maybe some hot movies came out before my family did and were still maybe in theaters around that time. Friday came out, J.Lo's
Ayo.
co-star Ice Cube, his first movie as a writer, creator, director. I don't know. Did he direct that movie? I think so. Also, a favorite of mine, While You Were Sleeping with Sandra Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have no clue what this movie is. I did look up the poster to see, like, why did this movie do so well? But Wings of Courage with Val Kilmer came out a little before.
Movie?
I have no clue. No clue. And I'm curious about French Kiss because they're directly correlated, but Wings of Courage, I have no desire to watch just from what I saw.
So I just looked it up. French Kiss is a Meg Ryan and Kevin Kline rom-com.
Oh, I knew it was a rom-com, which I was kind of shocked that it did so well. But Meg Ryan, of course, it's gonna be hot.
Yeah, that movie grossed
Kevin
a lot.
Kline, though?
A young Kevin Kline, yeah.
Wow, I'm curious. I feel like this has to be Scandalous because
French.
am I thinking of the wrong actor for Kevin Kline? I'm thinking of like the dude from American Pie. Yes, I'm thinking the wrong guy.
Who are you thinking from American Pie? Oh, Chris
the
Kline?
the one who plays lacrosse.
Yeah, I think Chris Kline.
That's okay. At least I was close. I wasn't completely off. Okay, I absolutely know nothing of Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline, and speaking of a Disney adult, he is the voice of Phoebus in Hunchback of Notre Dame. He also played Belle's dad, Emma Watts's dad, in the live action Beauty and the Beast.
I haven't seen that.
You don't need to. It's not that good. Sorry, Emma Watson. But no, Kevin.
I see the Hunchback. Oh, well, he is a career actor. He has loads of
he's huge.
I love the word loads now. Thank you. just because I'm in this British phase in my life. So he has loads of credits on his IMDb. So props to you, sir, for keeping your career afloat and acting throughout the many decades that you have. So those are movies that were competing with this movie. So the fact that you have like some big like movies like Die Hard and Braveheart, which are big action movies that month, and then you have Casper, which is very kid friendly. Then you have a rom-com. Like this movie, it did solidly. Like despite all that competition. I mean, Die Hard and Braveheart made hundreds of millions of dollars, but 11 million's nothing to frown at. I feel like
not bad. And I honestly, we could talk about this when we get to our last segment about thoughts on revamping, but I feel like if this was remade, it would be huge. Like I honestly feel like this has Oscar potential, but we can get into that later.
Let's talk about, we talked a little bit about J.Lo and her role in it. It's very small, but I personally felt like Nurses in the Wild was really small. This has a little more meat to it, and it has a little bit more seriousness to it. And I was kind of surprised at that. I wasn't expecting that. I think when especially since we're like going back with someone we already kind of know of differently in the present, I think it's amazing to see her kind of in a very humble place almost, like
Mhm.
in a very like believable place too. I'm not watching these movies and just like, oh, that's J.Lo, like look at her, she's so young and stuff. Like I'm like, oh shit, like she's actually out here really trying to like act, like get into it. So I mean, her character goes through a lot early on in the movie. The part where she gets deported was like heartbreaking. The part where
Mhm.
she's white water river rafting with her baby and not even
Woof.
in a boat, that was intense and very well acted, very well shot too. That was believable to me. I wasn't
Mhm.
like, I was trying to figure out how they pulled that off and made it look real and not questionable at all.
That goes back to those
And
practical effects, baby.
and the only thing that was questionable to me was just because I know, a couple movies later, her husband, like that she gets to act with, her husband is also an actor who plays her brother in Selena. So that was the only thing that really threw me off in this movie where I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Like, so besides that, she held her own. And I just want to shout out the actor who played the young Jose is Jacob Vargas, who also later plays oh God, AB Quintanilla in Selena. And despite that pairing being a little odd to me, I think her portion of the movie was very well done. And the later parts as well, but we're just focusing on her for a second. And what are your thoughts on some of the early action?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, I can just say ditto to everything you just said. But I think that this shows so she really is out here trying to act. I'm just saying about that. No, I totally agree that she like really tried with this film. Not saying that she didn't try with Lost in the Wild, aka Nurses on the Line, The Crash of Flight 7, or in you know, Anaconda and Selena. I mean, they're just very different roles, and because it almost felt like a historical timepiece, since it does span over several different generations, not several, but a few different generations and stuff, like it's gut wrenching, and her part, I think, although brief, is like really important. That's why this is one of the things that kind of makes it hold up to today.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that oh shit, I lost my thoughts. Oh, just to touch on like, oh, she out here acting. Like, I just feel like because in my mind, sometimes like when you look at an actor's career and journey, a lot of times people start out on TV or like obviously she did the TV movie and music videos and stuff. But like to me, this was like kind of a jump in terms of like, you know, seriousness. Like this wasn't a role that I feel like as a early in your career you, and I don't know, I'm not an actor, but I mean, I think these are the roles you don't really expect to get maybe as a, starting out as an
Agreed.
actor, but like you want to get the shot to do and prove yourself and stuff. And I think she probably didn't look into it, but like this was great for her to be able to get that and, get that under her belt really early on. And it was surprising to me in that way. She did do TV before this, though. I misspoke. She did. We can't watch it, unfortunately, because I can't find anywhere to watch South Central or the spinoff that she winds up on.
Mhm.
But and we're mostly focusing on movies. So I lied. She definitely did build up. But I mean, from a TV movie to this, and for this to be kind of not a fun, light role within this
Yeah.
movie, because she could have very well been like the daughter who becomes a nun. She could have the role that Constance Marie has. She could have played that role, or
Mhm.
she could have been the older sister who, like, when she was getting married, like before she gained all that weight, which was like a weird twist in her storyline.
Yeah.
But she could have played either of those roles, which to me would have been like not lesser, but like obviously their trajectories weren't as like serious as like, you know, falling in love with your husband, moving to California in the United States from Mexico, having kids, being deported, trying to fight back to get back to your family despite that. Like that's a lot. And
Mhm.
older Maria definitely reminds us. She's like, "Oh, you think I don't know how hard it is to like let me remind you." So, that's just what I meant by like J.Lo out here trying to act, you know. Like sometimes people don't take on serious roles until a little later in their career, but I think
Right.
she kind of got a little bit under her belt
Oh,
early with
totally.
this.
And that's not to say that like she doesn't typically take serious roles. She's done plenty of things that have given her a lot of credibility as an actress. But your point in that this was her first major breakout role in like cinema, that it's pretty impressive.
Yes, and with the cast too, like with the ensemble cast, with someone like Edward James Olmos, who is
Mhm.
like he is like one of the major to me like Latinx actors that I know of. So he is like the Meryl Streep of men male, or like Denzel or somebody of like Latinx actors to me. Like he has that kind of weight in that sphere. So um, just the fact that she held her own with all these other, you know, people who go on to do just as much or already did a lot is solid in my book. Yeah, I mean, so now we get to have a little fun, you know, get to talk about like, do we think it holds up today? Um, Possible like what would happen, you know, if this came out today or was remade. So
So, as a teacher, I could see myself using clips of my family when we discuss topics like immigration and cultural diffusion. We do a unit at my school surrounded on different stories of refugees. And while I know being a refugee and an immigrant are two very different things and have very different stories, um, the scene where she is crossing the river with her baby reminds me a lot of this novel that we read in class called Refugee, that has some similar stories. And I could just see like whether or not we're using 1995's My Family, or if this film was shot and remade again to use more modernized clips. I
J.Lo, remake it. Just saying.
think
They remake bullshit all the time.
oh
Okay.
yeah.
This movie, I think it holds up great, but like I feel like there would be no shame in remaking this because the story is still very like true. It would have to be a little different, and I'm sure there are different elements you could add to it, but I'm just saying, like J.Lo, you got the clout now. Just go ahead and remake it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I could see that this My Family in particular to have some kind of Oscar potential just because and that I think it would have to be new director, obviously a fresh cast and things like that, but I think there's enough depth in that story where even if you can't culturally identify with that movie or with the story of a family, a Latinx family, um, growing up in different generational times and eras. I think that if this would to be released in, let's say, around December, January time, when we tend to get some of the big heavy hitter and Oscar films, and have it be a little bit longer, because this one was about 2 hours. Um, I think that there could be a lot of potential there. I think if Into the Wild was Lost in the Wild was remade, jeez Louise, Simone Yamshan, I think if Lost in the Wild was remade, and it would not be made for TV, I would most likely give it a shot. But I'm curious to say, because now that we've watched a few jungle movies, what are you're thinking a little differently than I am?
Am I? I feel like it holds up well for a TV movie. Like, I feel like this could definitely still come on. I feel like CBS doesn't do TV movies anymore because TV's expanded so much. But again, like a Lifetime Hallmark type of like thing. But I also think because it was a TV movie and it's a real life situation, I'm assuming they made it to capitalize off of like this event in a sick, sad way. So like it was probably something that happened, and we should have looked up like the actual like what happened. But it was probably something that happened and was like fresh in the news, you know, where they like the college admission scandal. That thing was not even finished, and there's a Lifetime movie about it. So that's like what this gives me vibes of, like at least for Lost in the Wild. But I think it could be remade. I don't know if the well, I think it is based on a true story, and I think that works. Um, I would be interested in seeing them actually, well, they can't because that's the point. All the doctors got injured. So I was going to say I would be interested in seeing them actually work within that local community in that village and showing some of that part of it. But I think it could be remade. I since you've made me such aware of practical effects, I'm concerned that a CGI plane crash would not hit as hard as this did, even for a TV movie.
Oh, for sure.
I think the jungle, they could probably like do some better justice, like lighting and like cinematography wise with that kind of stuff. And I could see this easily being again another vehicle for some young actresses as these young nurses, you know, going into this situation. So why'd you say my view was different?
I don't know, because I know you had mentioned in our notes that like the jungle excitement the jungle excitement of the movie gets to you. And I think for me, if this was to be remade, I definitely would not be a made for TV movie. Like it would have to come out as a theatrical release. And I'm less inclined to see disaster movies, or like abandoned, stranded movies. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's not something that's gonna be
I mean,
high on my list.
yeah, I agree. I'm more of a drama person, to be honest. So if hypothetically these two came out again or just theatrically at the same time, I would probably be more inclined to see My Family because I'm more inclined to like more human like struggle and life stories versus, granted, Lost in the Wild is a human struggle life story.
There's
but
drama.
it's
Yeah.
but it is just a little more like rare. It's not as relatable. Like that's not something I'm probably going to go through in my life. Like I'm not going to be helping, you know, impoverished communities by going to help nurse or, you know, help medically. And I'm definitely not taking a tiny ass plane over the jungle anytime soon.
Okay, on a side note, I did that once when my family and I traveled to Costa Rica in 2005, and I was crying the entire time because like I was thinking about Aaliyah and Buddy Holly and like all these people who have like died in these tiny little puddle jumpers, and it was literally like
it was a very, very small cargo ship, and it was just me and my family, and the one or two pilots. Seatbelts were 100% optional, but I was just sitting there like, if I'm gonna pray one time in my life, it's gonna be right now.
I mean, honestly, that I feel you, especially on the Leah part. Like her death hit me really hard.
Mhm.
And I have anxiety, and I have like slight flying anxiety. I've been on a few flights where like it's always going back home. That's always like if like shit
Mhm.
happens like on the flight back home. It's never getting there. But I'm always just like hyper aware too on planes. So I can only imagine being in a small plane that increasing because it just feels way more dangerous.
Mhm.
And there's less accommodations to kind of distract you. There's less people to distract you, all kinds of things. I need a flight attendant to annoy the hell out of me or ask me if I want ginger ale. Like,
And I'm so glad that ginger ale is also your pre-flight cocktail of
yes,
choice.
yes. Ever since I started flying, that's my shit.
That's the go-to. All right. So, in speaking of cocktails, Bria, if you could either prepare a movie spread or a drink to pair with either My Family or Lost in the Wild, aka Nurses on the Line, Crash of Flight 7, what would you choose?
Well, I would just say that as a Californian, love Mexican food. So
Mm.
any chance to eat Mexican food is an option for me. Like I low key was envious during the wedding scene, also because of the mariachi band. When I was little, I went to a wedding with my mom for a coworker, and they had a mariachi band. And I
Ooh.
remember being like amazed and just like gassed up about this music, like just like this is awesome. What is this shit? Like we don't have this. Um, so I feel like I would probably choose My Family. I don't know. I feel like I would be eating rations if we did like the Lost in the Wild, the crack, the oh see, I can't even get the whole title right now. You're
Nurses on the
now I look
Line,
bad.
Crash of Flight 7.
So I'm definitely going with My Family. I feel like there's definitely some tequila flowing. There's definitely
Mhm.
I don't want to be like typical and be like margaritas are definitely, but there's probably some margaritas up in there. And gotta have some cerveza, some good Mexican beer or something. I'm wanting all the enchiladas, all the tamales. Yeah, just give it all to me. I will eat stuff I've never tried before. Like, but those are two foods I would think would be awesome in that watching this movie. And for a quick one, a little Taco Bell is
Ooh.
like is like the easy go-to for that.
Oh my God. You and
Especially
I have
90s
some fun
Taco Bell.
stories with Taco Bell.
Little chips and cheese, you
Mm,
know.
give me that queso.
Also, I mean, this is sidetrack. Oh, it's not really a sidetrack because you asked me cocktails
Yeah.
too. So for the Taco Bell recently, not to plug Taco Bell, but
Taco Bell, please
they,
sponsor.
oh my God, I would love it.
I will live Moss so much more. So much more Moss will be
So
lived.
hard, like so hard. Fourth meal all the time.
Mm.
But Taco Bell right now has one of those like Baja Freeze things, and it's like this blackberry midnight one.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, hold the phone because I went to Taco Bell once on my lunch and I got one and I was like, oh my God, this is really good. But this would be better with alcohol.
What alcohol
And
did you put in it?
so one time I tried tequila and it was really good. But my lonely single ass on Valentine's Day decided, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm gonna go to Taco Bell. I bought two of those bitches and I came back and I put Tito's in it. And I had me the best night alone I could think of. I was in here dancing and singing to R&B like I was living my best life. And it's a highlight of 2021 so far. So
Damn.
There's my cocktail. And it works in the jungle because it's a frozen slushy drink and it will cool you down. I don't think they could have a frozen slushy drink, but it would work like in my mind in terms of like the atmosphere.
Sure. Of course. Dude, I have not had the berry frozen blast yet, but I think aesthetically and taste wise, a diet Baja Blast is like, serve that shit at my funeral. I want it all the time. And
So
to have
at your
that,
wedding, have a Baja Blast like fountain where
dude,
it's
but
just
like
like
just the color of it is so divine, and it would go good with any clear alcohol. Like you could even mix that as a base for a Long Island iced tea if you really wanted to get fucked up. But like, yeah, just some a nice vodka or a nice tequila, or like even some gin with maybe even
oh yeah,
get
gin.
hella
I know you're a
fancy.
gin girl.
I love it so much. And
But this one is like a purple and blue like swirly thing.
yeah.
So I also feel like it's very 90s that aesthetic. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna need, I keep telling people this, and like many things I suggest to people, no one really listens to me. But please go to Taco Bell, order one, put some alcohol in it, alcohol of your choice, have a good time because it's a good time. As long as you don't put too much, because then you ruin the flavor.
You're living too moss at that point.
Too gnarly. Like, don't go on X Games mode too much.
For my cocktail for flight 7, Nurses on the Line, Crash of Flight 7, Lost in the Wild, it would be an IV fluid bag of wine.
Ooh, oh my god. You're so fucking smart. Hey, you thought about this.
I
To answer
did.
your question, you thought about this shit. I was like last minute, like Taco Bell. I just had this Baja freeze. That is smart. That goes so well. And it is good for traveling. Like it's like box wine, but sans box.
Okay, I have to be completely honest with you. I drink wine. That's like pretty much my beverage of choice. I do a lot of canned wines because I find that you get the most bang for your buck whilst trying to portion control. But I bought boxed wine for the first time over this past weekend, over President's Weekend. And that did not disappoint, but it is totally, you're right. Like it looks like an IV bag. You could most likely hook it up, although that would be astronomically dangerous because it goes straight into your bloodstream. You'd most likely die. But yeah, it's very,
and there were no deaths in this movie, so
true. Yeah, no one's trying to die. Although I just one more thing on Lost in the Wild, aka Nurses on the Line, the Crash of Flight 7. My all-time favorite part, I'm so sorry, it was not Jennifer Lopez, but with the character of Leanne, who is the wife of one of the doctors, or soon to be wife of one of the doctors.
Oh yeah.
She got concussed pretty bad. It was her plane that had went down. But when she comes out, she was almost in that kind of dreamlike concussed state where she didn't really think anything was wrong. So they're like, Leanne, and she just pops up. She's like, I'm fine. And then she's just so, it like, she just reminds me of a Xanax mom the entire time. And I know it is very sad because she hit her head pretty bad and got some like bad brain bleeding there, but no one died. So Leanne's fine. She's fine.
My favorite part from her is like, I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, which I must say, I am realizing the beauty. I know rewatching stuff, you definitely catch stuff you never saw or caught the first time around, but like rewatching so quickly, like just like as refreshes, I'm definitely realizing that like my attention span is really sucky and I miss stuff. But I didn't see the first time around that she like went MIA, like she left the like hospital center that they had and they were all at, and just like was in the jungle partying by a waterfall. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, isn't this great?
She was looking for her purse. She was like, I forgot my purse. I need my lipstick. And I was like, same,
And like,
man.
to
I
be
had done
honest, I wonder that I feel like that might be something that they added in as a little spice. Like I don't feel like that really happened because how the would they find her so easily? Like they were trudging. It wasn't like she just went down the street. Like they had to trudge through the jungle again to find her, and they lucked out that she was at this waterfall. Like, but
and she's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm like, sweetie, none of us know what we're doing here.
also the fact that like I low-key thought that she was gonna like jump in. Like I thought she was ready to like do like, oh my God, no, it's from I think Saved by the Bell Hawaiian style, like where like the typical Hawaii, like dive off the waterfall into the water, like cute scene. I thought she was totally gonna do that, but this waterfall looked more like Niagara Falls than like some like quaint, like little cutesy, like romantic waterfall. Like it was spraying everywhere. But that caught me off guard. I was like, damn, Leah. I will say too, like one thing in my family that's not crazy, but this movie is very much about heartbreak and heartwarming because like there's so much stuff that happens and some of it, you're like, well shit, that's life. And especially like when Chucho gets killed, spoiler alert, sorry. But he chose the thug life, and by the thug life he died. But like the impact it wind up having on his younger brother Jimmy and stuff like that. Like, and then at the end, Jimmy and his unexpected love, her dying in childbirth. I was like, really? Really? What the really? So that was tough. And then the whole like him not really, it kind of, I feel like if they remade it, I feel like there would have to be a little more nuance with those things. Like they would, like, I feel like it was, some stuff was very, very surface. I feel like they could do a better diving into some of those themes if they remade it. Like going into like, out of everyone in the family, why's Chucho decided that the street life is for him? And obviously, a knife fight would not be existing if it was remade. It would probably be very gun heavy, and probably very more serious than, just some neighborhood guys who are a little macho and, are from different areas. And then, oh my God, the fact that the cop shot him in the head from so far away with that weak ass pistol, I was like, that is highly unlikely. That is highly unlikely. Because I couldn't even see him in that shot, like where they, like from the perspective they had it at. I was like, how did he even see him from that far? Like I didn't see him anywhere. Oh shit! Sorry, whoever listens to this. I didn't see him anywhere like in that line of sight to like be taking a shot at someone. So, and it could very tragically like been like a missed shot that hit Jimmy, and like how fucked up would that have been? But those two things, like I was like, oh man. I mean, just when you think that they're gonna like do better, be better, they get set back a little bit. I am happy though that by the end Jimmy and his son are able to like figure that out because they were both being very stubborn, and more so Jimmy, he's the fucking adult, but his son wasn't very inclined to want his dad in his life for very good reasons. I'm glad they figured that out by the end because that would have been too much to handle. And I kind of wish there was like another wedding type moment where they all came together because I feel like one, we didn't get to see much of the older sister after the wedding. Like she was like in the kitchen at one point in her restaurant and then also the main character, like well, not the main, Edward James Olmos, I can't remember the character's name, but his character, I wish we saw more of his life. Like, what was like you telling everyone else's business? Like, what was going on? Did you ever get married? Did you ever date somebody? Like, so I feel like there's some things they could definitely add to the movie if they remade it, but it holds up well. It was really good. Back again, sorry, interrupting you. What's your cocktail for my family or your like food choice? Or are you only doing Lost in the Wild?
I didn't think ahead of my family. I was just
that's cool because
my Ivy bag of wine.
That's cool. I mean, I covered my family. I didn't really touch on Lost in the Wild, and you have a killer Lost in the Wild cocktail idea, so I'm not gonna hate on that. I feel like we should. I know they have them for Halloween parties and stuff. We definitely need a wine Ivy bag night.
Wait, they're real?
Like, not that you can put them in your bloodstream, but there's reusable bags that look like IV bags that you can put alcohol in. Like, I know I've seen that for Halloween parties and stuff.
Okay. And instead of having a needle, it's just like the straw and you can have it go into your mouth.
Yes.
Okay.
Or I don't know if it has straw. I think I've seen them. They have like twisty tops. And so maybe you just like
a sippy
like a Capri
with a really long straw.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. Well, I think we did an awesome job.
Yeah.
Especially after the shit show that was the first go round. Sorry, Anaconda. We did not do you justice.
We'll come back to you and try again.
It's like some breathy brace face kid.
Welcome to Blockbuster. How may I help you?
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And to the people who've stuck with us so far, come back for another episode of the Great Value version of Inside the Actors Studio.
But seriously, if you like us enough to stick around, take another deep dive down this IMDb rabbit hole with us as we discuss Money Train and Jack, another dynamic duo episode next week.
And on that note, if you've got nothing better to do, go figure out a theme to watch a bunch of movies you've never seen.
I'm your host, Simone.
And I'm your host, Maria, and this has been another episode of
Roll Call! And cut!